The Xbox news just doesn't stop, now does it? The most recent wave of criticism has been levied at Xbox Game Pass, with posts from former employee Raphael Colantonio, founder of Arcane and dev on Prey and Weird West, who is criticizing the service, and another post from Christopher Dring of The Game Business saying that no first party costs are included in the profitability claim that Xbox Game Pass is making. Wait, what? Christopher Dring changed his mind? It's profitable now? Got it. Anyway, these heightened critiques don't come out of nowhere. If Game Pass is profitable, why the layoffs? If it's someday deemed not profitable enough, what happens then? If you're breaking records in Q3, what's with the monumental changes that we've been talking about this last week? Now, I did get a comment about the profitability of Xbox Game Pass. So let's dive into that and what all these questions are about. Let's start things off with the post from Raphael, because he can act as our person with insider knowledge and firsthand experience discussing the matter. Here's what he says. First up, he says, why is nobody talking about the elephant in the room? Cough, cough, Game Pass. I think Game Pass is an unsustainable model that has been increasingly damaging the industry for a decade, subsidized by Microsoft's infinite money, but at some point, reality has to hit. I don't think Game Pass can coexist with other models. They'll either kill everyone else or give up. What happens when all that money runs out is the most vocal concern in my network, and one of the main economic reasons people I know haven't shifted to its business model. The infinite money thing never made any sense. I agree, and I'm fed up with all the BS they fed us at first, like, don't worry, it doesn't impact sales, only to admit years later that it totally does. No shit, it does, really. Regarding cannibalization of sales, we aren't seeing that. The economics never made sense, but at the same time, I do recognize that for smaller teams with newer, riskier IPs, it helped de-risk. Much prefer Sony's life cycle management strategy. Yeah, the only way Game Pass can coexist without hurting everyone is for the back catalog. I did reach out to see if he would like to sit down on Save State Plus and have a conversation, because I do genuinely think his insight is interesting, and what he is going to talk about in this video via his social media posts are interesting. And he's not the only one who feels that way. He got a retweet from the former VP of Biz Dev at Epic Games who said, exactly. We've heard from Sean Layden, who agrees with his sentiment. And we even see Michael Deuce chiming in. Michael Deuce of Larian, who works on Baldur's Gate 3, I should say, also chiming in. So I want to talk about some of these claims because I think they're well-intentioned, but when I start to dive into the numbers of Xbox Game Pass, I am a little confused about where that sentiment comes from. If you just start breaking down the revenue, let's take the information we know into account. Where does the money come from? The most obvious is subscription revenue, averaging out about $12 a tier times 12 months in a year. That's $5 billion a year. Microtransactions, DLC, let's say 25% of subs buy one microtransaction or one DLC a month. That's 525 million a year in microtransactions. Let's say you convert them to buy the game. That's 100 million to 300 million a year. We also know there are positive impacts to consider. There have been plenty of devs who said their games wouldn't have happened without Game Pass, or that it had a net positive for their game. Josh Sawyer said Pentiment couldn't have happened without it. The Tango Gameworks story is tragic, but Hi-Fi Rush wouldn't exist without it. Tunic wouldn't have gotten the exposure it needed without it. Outriders was profitable in its second month despite Game Pass, but of course that still wasn't enough for Square Enix, who was still unsatisfied. And Liza P. devs credited Game Pass for boosting visibility and sales on other platforms. Descenders devs, remember, this is an indie team, said they tripled their daily revenue after launching on Game Pass. So these are examples of what Xbox would point to as proof of their concept. Interesting new games that wouldn't happen otherwise, and new entries that see a revenue boost. But I think people are asking different questions. Are scope and budget of first-party games impacted by Game Pass? Is that a good limitation or a bad one? Do players care at the end of the day? Raphael was asked about this. Last I checked, Xbox was quite profitable. Game Pass is only profitable if you ignore the 100 billions that Microsoft spent in acquiring content for Game Pass, such as ZeniMax and Activision. It's a spreadsheet trick where they don't pull that detail in a profit and loss section, but instead in the amortization over time. But even he understands why gamers like it. Maybe you didn't understand my post. I understand gamers like it. It's a great deal. But the maths don't work for Game Pass. It only works because Microsoft injects billions into it to make it a good deal for the players. For now. That's only my opinion. I'm respectful. Be respectful. I understand you can look at it from just your standpoint, but when a deal is too good, there is a reason that might reveal itself later and will hurt everyone, including you. At the moment, you have access to a fair amount of good games for a fraction of the actual cost. What might happen once Microsoft has won? The games will start to suck and your sub will go up. Why? Because the current amazing deal you have is subsidized by Microsoft bleeding money into it with the hope they'll kill the competition. But once they manage to do it, things will get real. So those are his takes, but the real kicker was the Christopher Dring post that outlined the following. So costs associated with the Game Pass business is fees paid to third parties, marketing, service costs, and by that measure, it's profitable. What they don't count is the lost revenue that Xbox's first-party studios are seeing as a result of the service. I have to imagine if first-party studios receive similar compensation, that profitability might be correct. So Game Pass itself is profitable, but Xbox, including studios, isn't. Not seeing that anywhere, but it wouldn't surprise me. I asked for clarification on the Game Pass is profitable claim and was told no first-party costs are included. So this was the post making the rounds for the last several days, and literally as I was recording this video, Christopher Dring posted the following. Okay, I need to correct/clarify something. First, Xbox Game Pass is profitable, even when you factor in the lost sales for its first-party teams. Sources who would know have told me. Over 18 months ago, I checked with Xbox about what's included in the Game Pass P&L. Basically, I was looking to see if Game Pass cost factor and the impact to unit sales of their internal studios. I was told that first-party games have their own P&L separate to Game Pass as they make money via other means. I felt this piece of internal accountancy might mean Game Pass is profitable, but it sure does put pressure on the margins for its internal games and possibly means some studios don't make as much profit or any profit at all. That doesn't actually matter in real terms, but seeing the impact Game Pass was having on first-party games and the amount of money Xbox was spending on studios, I wanted to check if the full impact of the service was being considered in their Game Pass's profitable line. This was before Xbox started publishing fully on PS5. Studios can now make stronger margins on premium sales as a result of that move, but regardless to all that, sources have reached out to tell me that even when you include lost revenue associated with first-party games, not just unit sales but microtransactions, Game Pass is still profitable. So that's great. Right, Tony Hawk is out. Let's get back to that. Literally, this whole drama was just wiped out basically by this statement. And what was my reaction to this? I reached out for comment and said, we've seen a lot of finger pointing at Game Pass, and I think Xbox would benefit from providing a statement. Should be easy to clear up if they can. Right now, the narrative is Game Pass isn't profitable. Dring paints a worse picture. It also siphons money away from studios. Spencer has repeatedly said this is not the case, and there are positive stories about Game Pass helping a dev get a project done. I want to have a clearer picture of how well this is working overall, given everyone is super pissed at Microsoft and Xbox due to the layoffs right now. My point being that everybody is emotionally charged because they're seeing their friends get axed out of long-standing jobs. People like me are seeing Forza Motorsport is potentially no more. It's upsetting. But going back, Dring is basically saying that it looks good on paper, but without the first-party dev cost, it falls apart. Sources at Xbox tell me that if you're referring to dev costs, we don't count those. They're incurred regardless, since we'd build the game for other platforms with their own revenue models. Long story short, I've also been told by sources at Xbox that Game Pass is profitable overall, and they factor in impact to unit sales and post-sales monetization. And we've already talked about the positive impact to consider. We've already heard from many devs about how happy they are that Game Pass helped their game get seen or helped it happen in any capacity. But the real question I think people are asking is the following. Are scope and budget of first-party games impacted by Game Pass? Is that a good limitation or a bad one? And do players care? Raph gets why Game Pass is enticing, but thinks it'll either become so successful that Microsoft will literally kill everyone else, or they'll just give up on it. Michael at Larian, the studio behind Baldur's Gate 3, asks, what happens if the Microsoft money runs out? Look, maybe Game Pass is profitable. That's what Microsoft is saying. That's what they've always said. But no matter how you look at it, Xbox has failed to convince the masses and the people who make games that that statement is true. Going forward, I think any company looking to do business with Microsoft had better have a golden parachute plan in place like Bungie did with Sony, because it's clear that it doesn't make sense to be bragging about a 51% year-over-year revenue bump in gaming like Microsoft did, or a 62% year-over-year content and services vertical, which is where Game Pass lives, especially when you have a devastating amount of layoffs yet again. I do see a lot of people in the comments saying that this is just business, that it's happening to everyone, and that they're still excited to play Xbox games. That's great, and I get that. If you're a dev and you get a Microsoft deal, there's probably a layoff timer ticking in your head the moment you start, though. If you've survived this long, you're probably feeling a mix of guilt and an urge to update your resume. That's not just a morale problem, that's a reputation problem, and it's one Xbox will have to solve fast. So even if Microsoft says Xbox Game Pass is profitable till they're blue in the face, it doesn't really matter because the problem is bigger than that with the company. But that's my take. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to know when my content goes live. Thank you so much for watching this one. I do greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much to the members, Chris Reddy, Phil Roney, Spingetter, and Aries EMS. I greatly appreciate you, as well as everybody who has backed this independent endeavor. You can support at patreon.com/SaveStatePlus or click the join button to become a member. Now, unfortunately, if you want to see my report about how Forza Motorsport is basically done, you can see that down below. That one makes me very, very sad, and I'll see you for the next video. Bye for now, everybody.